Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Beyond Half Court Podcast, episode 3. Shout out to everyone joining me again. If you missed my other episodes 1 and 2, you can check them out on my YouTube channel, Beyond Half Court Podcast, or you can also check it out under the same name on Spreaker, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's where I'm also uploading these podcasts. If you enjoy a more video sort of podcast, go on the YouTube site. But if you're kind of, on the move, you're in the car and you just want to listen, those other platforms are what you're going to want for sure. Also wanted to add that on my other YouTube channel, just Beyond Half Court, minus the just, it's like Beyond Half Court Podcast, but just without the podcast word at the end, obviously. But on that channel, I am uploading ranking videos on top 10 positions. I've done point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. My last one is centers, and the centers are coming out this Wednesday. I just dropped today, as I'm recording this on Saturday, September 10th. Just dropped the top 10 power forwards. So go check that out if you haven't already. You can go to the link if you're on YouTube. You can go to the link below on the link tree, and I'll take you to all my socials and the other YouTube channel. And if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcast, it should be in the description of just the entire profile for my link tree. It should be there. But if not, just go on YouTube, type in Beyond Half Court, and you'll find my channel there. All right, with that out of the way, let's actually get into what we're going to be doing today. Not a lot of news for this week. We just have one thing from Shams, and then after that, I am going to use the tier maker, and we're going to use that, and we're going to rank pretty much all the teams in the NBA going in the next season. But we'll save that for last because this thing from Shams is super quick, and it's really interesting. I'm not sure what to think about it, but let's read through it together. I'm going to pull it up for our YouTube viewers, but if you're just listening, I will read it for you. Here we go. Awesome. So Shams tweeted out yesterday on the 9th, current framework of NBA in-season tournament as soon as 2023, 2024 per sources. Now you've got 3 points here. Cup games through November. That's the first point. The second point, 8 teams advance to single elimination final in December, and the other 22 teams continue with the regular season. And then the last point, all games part of normal 82 game schedule, 1 extra game for 2 final teams. So this is really interesting to me. They have for a long time been trying to figure out how to do an in-season tournament. They look at kind of what soccer's doing, even with what the WNBA is doing, and obviously that's great for their league. So the NBA is also trying to incorporate that. I don't really blame them. I think they also want to add this just so that the regular season has a little bit more value. I think at this point we all kind of realize that, the regular season isn't not necessarily watered down, but because people are just kind of load managing, trying to take the 82 games, as slow as possible and just ramping it up at the very end. A lot, the beginning is always super important, how people mesh. The middle part doesn't really matter all that much unless you care about the all-star game and who makes it. So yeah, I think having this, if it goes through November, this would make kind of that middle portion of the season a little bit more interesting. And obviously the end, it's ramping up for the playoffs. So I think this would make up for, the dead moments during the season for sure. We'll go through, so that first point, cup games through November. Now, I'm assuming that means that all the games that qualify for the in-season tournament, it would start from the beginning of the season and would go through some date in November, unless it's November 1st, and then pretty much to go on to that next point that Shams has, 8 teams advance to a single elimination final in December. I'm assuming, wait, hold on. Cup games through November. So maybe it goes through all the way to the end of November. So from the this is just like what I understand. I'm actually still kind of confused about it all, but from what I understand, it seems that maybe from the start of the season to the end of November, the top 8 teams, I think just in general, um, will be in this elimination tournament, and it's going to be part of the regular season, so it's not any extra games except for that last final game. It's just one extra game. It's not that big of a deal. A player can rest after that. Like they can all take the next game of the regular season that's not a part of the cup game. They could take that off. Like, hey, you won. Here's your reward. You get a bunch of money and you get a day off. How nice is that? So I don't think that extra game is really going to hurt anything, which is good. Really good for that. Now, that's kind of all we got from Shams on that. Still a little bit confused. If you kind of have a better understanding of what Shams is trying to say, always let me know. You can go on my Twitter at BHC23, hit me up, let me know, fill me in. But he also added that the NBA and the NBPA are still working to finalize the in-season tournament concept, which includes to be determined prizes for the 8 teams that advance to the single elimination round, sources say. So, that has to do with the money. Does it impact seeding in the playoffs? Maybe. Does it impact the All-Star game at all? Who knows? So that's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens with that. But it's not going to happen until not this season, coming up the season after. So they still got plenty of time to figure that out. Hopefully they do. I'm actually very intrigued. I know when people are a little critical when the NBA tries to switch stuff, when they switch the All-Star game to like the draft format. I think a lot of people liked it, but then there's like some skeptics, and obviously the bubble had a lot of question marks, but I think everything they've done that's like not typical of the NBA to do, I think they've done a really good job at. So I think if they do a in-season tournament, I think it's going to be great. It's just at that point where the player's going to want to do it. I think I had saw on Twitter today that Mark Cuban was saying that he's just going to rest his players and they won't even try for it because they just care about the championship. So that's maybe a hurdle that they have to get over. It's like, are you going to make these players do the in-season tournament? Like, I'm sure it doesn't say that in their contract, so they could technically not do it, I guess. But who knows? That's very interesting to think about. It's for another year, so we won't get to figure that one out yet. But yeah, that's really all the NBA news that was notable, at least for this last week. But for now, we're going to switch over and we're going to start ranking NBA teams and who's tanking, who's our finals contenders. Here we go. Let's do it. So again, if you're just listening, I will try my best and help you guys out here and tell you what rank I'm doing. All right, so I had to do a cut because for some reason my tier list kind of disintegrated in front of my eyes. I had labeled all the tiers. Instead of having like the S, A, B, I had actual names, so it was a little bit easier to quantify the rankings of everything. That just disappeared. I had made it before I started, and it disappeared. So I had to make that again. So it might be a little awkward in the editing. But yeah, we're just going to get started now. I have six. I threw up an 8. We have 6 different tiers. We'll start from the top. We have finals contenders, and we'll make our way down. Next, we have the conference finals contenders. We have playoffs, play-in, almost play-in, and then the infamous tank. So just to kind of distinguish what playoffs and the play-in ranking is. So playoffs, to me, those are teams that could definitely, make that first round. But maybe like it'd be a tough series for them to, get to that second round, or, they could advance to that second round. And then the play-in for me is teams that I think are obviously in that playoff hunt, but they're most likely going to be around that 9 or 10 spot, maybe the 8 seed. And then I have the almost playing as well. Those are teams that I think are just too good to tank, but also just too bad to actually make it into the play-in. Actually, just looking at the teams now, I think I'm only going to have one team in that ranks. There are a lot of teams that are going to be tanking, and there's also a lot of teams that are probably going to have a conversation in the play-in. So we're just going to start in the order that this tier list has for us. And the first team that we're going to rank is the 76ers. So I think this one, personally, for me, is a little bit easy. The Sixers, obviously, Harden is coming off his hamstring injury. They got some really good pieces in the offseason. They were able to get PJ Tucker. They got DeAnthony Melton. And they also just got Montrezl Harrell. I guess that is a piece of news that I kind of just forgot off the top of my head, but they did just get Montrezl Harrell. Now, come playoff time, Montrezl probably won't be that impactful, but when it comes to the regular season, he's always been really solid, and you kind of need that to back up Joel Embiid, that'd be able to lighten the load throughout the regular season. So hopefully by the time playoffs comes, Joel Embiid would feel a little bit more lively. He won't have to play as much, I think. I really like what the Sixers did this offseason. I really want to put them in finals contenders because I think they're probably going to be like top 2, top 3 team. And obviously, if you make it in that top 2, like you just have to beat one other team. So you could definitely be a contender for the finals. But man, it's not on record, but this is just based off like my experience with my expectations for the Sixers. They always let me down. So I know if I'm going to put them in this finals contenders, they are not going to make it. So I'm going to put them in conference finals contenders. I am comfortable putting them here. They could very well make it to the finals, for sure. But for me, I don't know, man. They always underperform. They always don't exceed or even meet my expectations. There's been many years where, they should be making it out of the second round and they just don't. I think last year, even though Harden was injured, they should have made it out of the second round. Not a lot of people believed in the Heat, and I think the Heat are a really good team. We'll get to them towards the later end of this list, but I don't know, man. I can't trust the Sixers. They're a great team, but I can't trust them. Next, we got the Washington Wizards. I don't think that they are definitely not a playoff team. Definitely not a tanking team. I think, with Bradley Beal coming back, that Porzingis had a really good stretch with them, and that the 17 games he played, he didn't play particularly well with the Mavericks. But as soon as that trade happened, his bumps, he saw some bumps in his points. His efficiency went way up. So, maybe that's a good situation for Porzingis. You got Kuzma. Kuzma's really good. He's improving. Some pretty solid role players. Rui Hachimura. We'll see how much he improves. He's kind of been stagnant a little bit. Just kind of a solid guy. We'll see how much of a jump he makes. I don't know. I think, overall, not a great team. They could potentially also be in this almost play-in rank. But I think as we get later into this list, I think it just makes sense that they're going to be in this play-in spot. Next, we got the Atlanta Hawks. Huge news with the Atlanta Hawks. They have DeJounte Murray now, and they really didn't have to trade much. I mean, they kept a lot of their core. They didn't have to trade any of their starters. Even kept a Kongwu, nice backup big for them. So, yeah, man, I think the Atlanta Hawks, although they had a really disappointing season last season, just based off what had the season prior, with them making the conference finals, they made the play-in tournament, and they were able, to win their 2 games, and they made it to the 8th seed. Trae Young did not play well at all against the Heat. I think that's pretty well known. He only averaged like 16 points on really bad shooting splits. But I think, having DeJounte Murray there definitely lessens the load for him. I think they'll probably learn off of that. And I don't think that's going to happen again, especially since like Trae Young had a great playoff like run, as that being like his first one when he made it all the way to the conference finals. Like, I was really surprised how bad he played against the Heat. the Heat are also just a really good defensive team. So I think they're definitely, they can make the playoffs. They can either be a tough out in the first round or, they'll make it to the second round. But I definitely don't think these guys are a playoff team. I think, adding DeJounte Murray definitely, they were a playoff team last season. So I think adding an all-star to your team definitely should allow you to bump up into that third tier, which is the playoff tier. Next team that we got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, they got Donovan Mitchell, we talked about in our last podcast episode. So if you want to hear my opinions on that, go check that out. So I won't go too in depth on this Cavs team, but it's so crazy because you see how good their like starting five is, and there's still a lot of questions with like who's going to be their small forward. There's like 3 different options they could really go with, but none really gives them a solid answer to trying to find like a true 3-and-D guy. But when you have such a talented like 4 out of 5 like starters having Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, who's improving, Jared Allen, who was just an all-star, like you would think that they could make it to the conference finals. That seems like a really talented team, and it is. But there's just so many, like the East is just so top heavy. Like I can realistically see the Cavs making it to the 6th seed. Like you got the Bucks, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Nets, and who's the 5th team? There's a 5th team I'm missing. The Heat. Like that's 5 teams right there. And potentially the Cavs could be, maybe the 5th seed, but even then I think that puts them into that playoff spot. They were actually like before the Mobley and Jared Allen injury towards the tail end of the season, they were actually projected to make the playoffs. They ended up losing a couple games towards the end there, made it to the play-in, and then they had to play the Nets, and obviously the Nets are just a better team. Everyone was finally there. Kyrie was there. KD was healthy, so it was a really close game. Cavs lost that one, and then they played the Hawks, and the Hawks, I think, from my memory, actually kind of destroyed them, which is kind of disappointing for the Cavs. But adding someone like Donovan Mitchell is definitely going to improve them. So again, kind of like the same logic from the Hawks. If they were a playing team last season, they're going to be a playoff team. Just adding another all-star to your team, it's going to do that for you. Next, we got the Detroit Pistons. Now, I really like what they did, trading players for some cap space. They got Jaden Ivey. They also got the one center. Oh my God, what is it? Jalen Duren, or it's Jay something. Jay Duren, something Duren. I'm really bad with rookies. You're going to come to find out when it comes to draft time. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't really follow the college basketball game. So going to learn the names as we go along here. But, from what I was seeing from Duren in the summer league and, just highlights and stuff, definitely going to be a solid player for them for sure. But, and Cade, obviously, Cade is great. But yeah, it's probably going to be another, tank season. I don't think, those are some great pieces to build around, but they're just not there yet. At their best, I think they could be an almost playing team, obviously better than some other tanking teams like the Jazz or the Spurs. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're still going to be kind of in that mode where they want to draft one more good piece. And that's fine. I think that's great. If you get one more guy, then you got a really good foundation to build off of, and then you can see yourself rising on this list for sure. Next, we got the Indiana Pacers. So they've obviously have decided to finally rebuild for the first time in forever. And it's going to be interesting kind of to see what they do now, because I think Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, that's kind of like always the main topics in trade discussions here. We'll see if they actually get traded to the Lakers. I don't think it would happen unless the Lakers trade their picks, which they probably won't, but they should. But that's another conversation. Yeah, they're definitely going to be tanking. They're looking for the draft pick. Obviously, they traded Malcolm Brogdon. Sabonis is gone. They're going into the rebuild. They got Halliburton. They tried to get DeAndre Ayton, which is a great move for them, but obviously the Suns matched that contract, so that didn't end up happening. Yeah, man, the Pacers, not really much to look forward to here except for Halliburton being good. They have Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson. Those are two young bigs that they have that could definitely see improvement. They want to lose games. That's pretty much what's going to happen here, and their young guys are just going to develop. That's good for the Pacers, man. I've been tired of seeing them just be really mediocre, like either barely make it to the playoffs or barely miss it. Like that, being in that purgatory is just never good. It's just like you got to go all in, or you pretty much have to tank. And finally, they've decided to tank. So that's good for them. Next, we got the Bucks, and this is going to be our first finals contender. I don't think there's much I need to say here. I know they got bounced out of the second round, but it wasn't 7 games, and they didn't have Middleton. And I think, in my opinion, the Bucks definitely would have beat the Celtics with Middleton on that team. It was just so close with Giannis just carrying it anyway, and I think you add Middleton to that mix. I think Giannis plays a little bit better as well because he doesn't have as much focus on him on the defensive end or on the offensive end. Defensively, obviously, the Celtics are focused on him. And to me, just Giannis is the best player in the league, and the Bucks just overall, they got a great starting lineup. They got some great depth. They got Joe Ingles coming off the bench now. He is coming off an injury, so we'll see how that looks. They got Beauchamp. Obviously, I just told you guys don't know much about the rookies, so I have seen a little bit, just like him, like in post conference, like post game conferences and stuff, and seems like a really cool guy. So I'm rooting for him. I think he was homeless, so always rooting for someone like that who came from the mud. Yeah, man, I just think that the Bucks are just going to be one of the best teams. And I think they would have made the finals last year too, again, if Middleton was healthy. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully everyone stays healthy again and they actually get a proper chance to run it back off that championship win. Next, we got the Toronto Raptors. Man, the Raptors are so weird to rank because last season, I did not expect them to make the playoffs. I thought they would be, a play-in team or even possibly a tanking team. I didn't think that they were going to be all that great, and they really surprised me. I know Pascal Siakam is really good. To me, he's one of the more underrated players in the league, probably my personal pick for most underrated. But man, they just have a lot of really good people, a lot of really good pieces. Fred VanVleet, he obviously made an all-star team. Gary Trent Jr. is a great piece. Scotty Barnes is going to keep improving. They got Pascal, obviously. Achua, after having one of the worst seasons ever in the beginning, turned into a really good defensive big. He's only 6'8" or 6'9", and he was he was putting the ball on the floor. He was doing hezzies. It was kind of crazy. So, for me, I think I would put the Raptors in the playoffs for sure. They were the 6th seed, right? So that would put them outside of the play-in tournament. I think they only get better with the young pieces that they have, so I think they stay in that playoff spot for sure. Now we got the Mavericks. Now the Mavericks are weird for me as well. I again didn't think that they were going to make it to the Western Conference Finals, but the Suns kind of poop their pants there in Game 7, and they ended up making it. They made some noise against the Warriors. A 6-game series. Luka, Luka's going to Luka, top 5 player for me, for sure. But you lose Jalen Brunson, and, Jalen Brunson didn't have, the most outstanding regular season, but the playoff run that he had was just insane. He's on the Knicks now. We'll get to the Knicks later as well, obviously. Now you're probably going to insert Spencer Dinwiddie there in the starting group, which is fine. That's a good replacement for Brunson. I don't know, man. I think Brunson was really good, really important to their team. I don't know. There's a lot of other really good teams in the West, and I think when you just compare them, there's just a little bit more uncertainty about them making it back to the conference finals. So I think they're a playoff team for sure. Definitely not a play-in team. They are not on the Wizards level. It's just kind of like what I said with the Cavs. There's just so many good teams at the top that you could be the 6th seed, but you can still be really good, and you can still make noise in the playoffs and make it interesting for the other teams. So being in this playoff spot isn't something to be taken lightly, but I don't know. I just think losing Brunson is a big part of them kind of dropping down to this playoff spot. Now, next, we got my Denver Nuggets. Now, again, I'm going to try to not to be biased here, but I'm going to put them up right into this conference finals contenders. Now, this is all kind of just off the fact, or it's based on, just assuming that everyone is healthy here. Obviously, they're going to be coming back from being injured. That's a big question mark. How are they going to look? For me, I think for any player, it's going to take a while for them to come back from injury. But, at some point, they're going to get consistency and they're going to at least be like 90% to what they did. And I just think with how good Jokic has been and how much better he's been playing, like, I can't think how good the Nuggets are going to be. Like, they could very well not make it to the conference finals, but I don't know, man. It's just Jokic is getting better, and I know some people may say he doesn't perform that well in the playoffs. I would personally disagree, but even if you feel that way, I think you can agree adding, your second and third best player would definitely make things a little bit easier for him. You'll probably see some more open looks, make it harder to guard the team just in general. They also got Bruce Brown and KCP as some nice 3-and-D guards that they've really needed for really the past couple seasons. Man, I really wish this team had Jeremy Grant still, because he's really good right now. They could use him, but Aaron Gordon is still a fantastic player for them as well. Hopefully he can get a little bit more consistent from the 3-point. Not, at the rate that I like it right now. It's only like at like 35%, which is like respectable, but I would like it higher, especially with how good Jokic is as a passer. But I don't know. And Bones is obviously going to improve. He's going to be taking over that 6-man role. Monte Morris is gone. He's on the Wizards now. I was actually really skeptical about that Monte Morris trade just because I liked Monte Morris. I thought he was like a no mistakes guy, just all around solid. I just didn't want to go all in on Bones being the backup point guard right away. But, once we got Bruce Brown, get KCP, and it's like now we got some defensive guards to put next to Jokic, but also Bones, because Bones is not that good of a defender. I think it made me a little bit more optimistic towards Bones taking over that role. So I'm really high on the Nuggets. Obviously, I don't think they're going to make the finals. I'm not that biased. But man, like when they made it to the conference finals in the bubble, and Jokic wasn't even as good as he is now. Like he was great back then, but he's won 2 MVPs since then. So I don't know, man. The Nuggets can be super scary. Going to be watching almost every game. And I can't wait to see what they do, see how Jamal Murray comes back, see how Michael Porter comes back. It's going to be interesting. Nuggets definitely going to be a team to look out for. Kind of underrated towards the, just from fans. It just from my perspective, because I don't really see a lot of people talking about them. I see people talking about the Suns, the Clippers, obviously the Warriors. But I don't see a lot of people talking about the Nuggets, so I think this is a sleeper team a little bit. But we're gonna move on now. Talked a little bit too much about the Nuggets. I'm sorry, but it's my team, man. We're gonna move on to the Grizzlies, though. And the Grizzlies, for me, I don't think they're on that Nuggets level. Definitely could. Ja is a great player. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to continue to get better. Desmond Bane is going to continue to get better. Lost Anthony Melton, obviously, to the Sixers, so that kind of sucks. But it's kind of weird. He wasn't really getting a lot of playing time with them. Tyus Jones was kind of that backup guard for them. There were some games where D'Anthony Melton had a little bit more playing time, but he was obviously a little bit expendable for them. But D'Anthony Melton was still really good for them. Nice 3-and-D guard. I think the Grizzlies are definitely on this playoff spot again, like the Cavs and the Mavs, rhyming accidentally. There's just a lot of good teams in the West, and I just think when you take that into account, I think the playoff spot is a good spot for them. Definitely, not going to rule out that, depending on who they play in the second round, they could make it to the conference finals, but I just think if you kind of predict who you think might make it, to the conference finals, I think the Grizzlies might be just on the lower end of that list. Now we have the Timberwolves. Timberwolves. There's a lot of question marks to me for this team. How's Cat going to play at the power forward? That's new for him. What's the fit going to be like with him and Rudy Gobert? I think the only kind of consistent thing that we have here is Anthony Edwards. It's going to continue to get better. I think a lot of the success for the Timberwolves is actually going to rely on Anthony Edwards improving, becoming just a better scorer. I mean, he's already a great scorer. He showed that in the playoffs. But if he can do that in the regular season and then just improve even more in the playoffs, I think that really helps the Timberwolves' chances. They're too good for the play-in. I think they're just a playoff team. Again, there's a lot of good teams. I don't think it's bad to be here. All right, we're going to have a speed run here. We're going to do two teams at the same time. We got the Spurs and the Jazz. We're just putting them in the tank. We'll go with the Jazz first. Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, they're both gone. And they're most likely going to be trading all of their veteran pieces like Bogdanovich, Jordan Clarkson. What was the other guy? There's one more. Jordan Clark. I just said Jordan Clarkson, right? Yeah. They're going to be trading the veterans. So this team is going to be bad. They're going to be going for Victor Wembanyama. And I don't blame them. San Antonio Spurs, traded DeJounte Murray. That's the only really good player they have. They have Keldon Johnson. Devin Vassell is a good player. That's all. And Jakob Poeltl, obviously. But not much to build off on here. And not really a lot of star talent on that team. They're tanking. What more can I say? They're not going to be good. Next, we got the LA Clippers. Water break. The LA Clippers, for me, also in this conference finals contender thing. Obviously Kawhi's coming back from injury. PG was in and out of the lineup with injuries. John Wall's been out for pretty much 2 seasons without, playing due to an injury. So a lot of question marks as well. But man, you just look at what the Celtics did with Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and I'm just like, I can see them. I can see, Paul George and Kawhi doing the exact same thing. I think they're, those two teams kind of mirror each other in a way. Lots of defensive versatility. The Clippers' depth obviously is a big positive for them as well. I think a lot of the success is going to determine on how well John Wall plays. It's been a little bit. He's not going to be the best player on the team anymore. He's obviously a great playmaker, but how good of a 3-point shooter is he going to be? I know we talked about it in a lot of interviews that was something that he was working on, and that's something that you like to hear if you're a Clippers fan. But yeah, I think if all goes well, even if John Wall isn't the greatest 3-point shooter, I think there's a lot here to be really happy about if you're a Clippers fan, and as long as health permits, I think they make the conference finals for sure. Next, we got the Suns, and I know they got booted out of the second round, but the Suns won 64 games last season, if I remember correctly. It was like 63 or 64 or even 62, but they had the best record in the NBA. They're just going to come back. I mean, one thing that is interesting, though, is maybe that we may see a dip. They may just be like a solid playing team because the dynamics with DeAndre Ayton, it didn't seem like the Suns were too interested in getting them back, but once the Pacers kind of offered them a contract, they're like, okay, you know what? Yeah, well, we'll offer you a contract. I think realistically they would want to trade DeAndre Ayton, so that may change how good the Suns are. They may get a really bad trade for him. Probably wouldn't if you're trading, DeAndre Ayton. You'd probably get something good back, but yeah, man, I don't think the Suns should be taken lightly, even though they really did bad. They just, they went to the finals. So Chris Paul probably going to digress. Booker should be about the same or a little bit better. Mikal, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, all those guys should improve. I don't know. I think these guys are a conference finals team. I think that's one team that could definitely make it for sure. Next, we got the Portland Trailblazers. Damian Lillard is going to be coming back from his abdominal injury. Anthony Simons had a breakout season. He's going to get better. They traded for Jeremy Grant. Josh Hart, really good for them towards the tail end of the season there. Yusuf Nurkic kind of has been pretty down from what he was doing a couple years ago. But that starting lineup is pretty good. It gets bad when you go into the bench. Not really much there to be excited about. I think they are definitely in this playing spot for sure. I think having a star player definitely helps you not be in that almost playing spot. But their starting five is pretty good, and they'll be fighting for a playing spot. And I think it also just depends on how consistent is Damian Lillard going to be after season. We'll see if he can stay healthy. We'll see how Jeremy Grant fits in. He should fit in really well. It's just going to be weird, though, because when you look back into his career, he was a role player, and then he went to the Pistons, and he became pretty much a star player. Not saying that he was a superstar, but he's the best player on the team. So it'll be interesting for him to kind of maybe meet somewhere in the middle. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, Blazers playing team. That's where I got them. Next, we got the Sacramento Kings, and this is where we're going to put our almost playing team. I don't think the Kings are bad enough to be tanking here. We're probably going to be looking at some teams in the West. Should be like, you know what? You're right. These teams are pretty bad. We already have the Jazz on here. We'll have a couple more teams here coming up. Sabonis is always really good, really solid. De'Aaron Fox, when Sabonis got traded, really saw improvement in his numbers. He was, kind of bordering that 20 points per game before he got there, but then he shot up to 25 to 27. His efficiency went up. You can see the two-man game kind of developing. The Kings also got a lot of shooters around them, so that should help them as well. I don't think they make it to that play-in spot, but I also don't think they're bad enough to tank. So this is my only almost play-in team. Next, we got the New York Knicks. They got Jalen Brunson back. They got him from the Dallas Mavericks. They re-signed Mitchell Robinson, which was good for them. They also extended RJ Barrett. So yeah, Knicks didn't make the play-in last season. Huge disappointment. They were an even bigger disappointment than the Hawks last season. But I think Julius Randle comes back. Probably maybe, borderline all-star player. Brunson is obviously really good. I don't think they are an almost play-in team. I think they're very close, though. I think they just make it into this play-in, fight with that Jalen Brunson signing. I think what we saw from Jalen Brunson in the playoffs, maybe not as good, but I think it's, closely replicable for sure. I think he could do, similar stuff. Almost done here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 more teams to go over. We're going to try to go fast on a couple of these for the tanking ones, but we're going to go with the Pelicans first, and we're just going to go playoffs for them. I think Zion coming back, CJ McCollum's on the team, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, all those guys. Those are just so good pieces for them. Valanciunas was great for them in the playoffs. Couple moments where, he kind of got played off the court a little bit, with the Suns just moving all over the place. Valanciunas isn't the fastest player, but definitely an impactful player for the Pelicans. I don't know, man. I think the Pelicans are just going to be a really good team. A lot of this has to do with them bringing a 27-point per game scorer back on their team. Obviously, he has to stay healthy for them to even make it into this playoff spot, but man, the Pelicans are going to be fun to watch because they were fun to watch against the Suns, and no one thought they were going to win any games off the Suns, and they won 2. So if they're able to do that without Zion, I think people got to be scared with the Pelicans. Next, we got the Hornets. The only thing to kind of mention here is they obviously have LaMelo Ball still. Miles Bridges, who knows what's going to happen with him. I'm pretty sure he's still a free agent. He has a roster. But the Hornets are just meh. It's very meh. They have some young pieces, but it's really just LaMelo Ball and a couple guys. Gordon Hayward, he's got to stay healthy though. Kelly Oubre. They have to figure out their center position. Mason Plumlee is just not that guy. He should really be coming off the bench. Probably going to be asking Mark Jones, their newly drafted player, to kind of step up a little bit more than he expects. So that's going to be interesting. I was actually going to put them in the plan, but I think I lied about this almost plan. I don't think they I don't think they make the plan. I think losing Miles Bridges is definitely, a tough go for them. But LaMelo Ball, obviously a really good player. Improved last season, but they were a play-in team last season, and you obviously lose a really talented player. And if you watch my top 10 power forward, so you lose a top 10 power forward, I think you drop down to an almost play-in team. But they could very well do it just based off of how good LaMelo Ball could possibly be. We'll go fast on this one. The Rockets, they obviously have Jalen Green, Sangoon, and then their newly drafted player. Oh my God, what is his name? I am so bad with rookies' names. Like, it is Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith. That's who their new player is. I am not looking like an NBA scholar right now, but that's okay. But yeah, they're going to be tanking some more. I think they got some good foundations, but very similar to the Pistons. They just got to get, I think, one more draft pick, and then after that, I think they can kind of go not all in towards winning, but just trying to like build a winning culture. I think they're almost there. Just one more year tanking, I think, will do it for them. Next team, we got the Miami Heat, and I think they're a conference finals contender. Obviously, they made the conference finals last year. They're gonna remain the same, just throughout. They obviously lost PJ Tucker, but Jimmy Butler's still gonna be great. Bam. Had a little bit of a down season last year, so hopefully he could pick it up. Tyler Hero is going to improve. Kyle Lowry is most likely going to come into the season a little bit more in shape. That can only do wonders for the Heat. Did not have the greatest season last season, so we could see improvement from Kyle Lowry. I'll keep it simple. The Miami Heat are just always an underrated team. People don't expect them to make it to the conference finals, and they do. So I'm going to keep them here at this conference finals contender. Next, we got the Chicago Bulls. I think the Chicago Bulls are definitely a playoff team. I feel really bad for the Bulls because they traded all those picks. They got DeMar, they got Vucevic, but this Alonzo Ball injury, in my opinion, is just really bad for them. Alonzo Ball's had a lot of setbacks. We don't know when he's going to come back. You're just a huge part in that team. You would have to rely more on Caruso minutes, which is fine. Caruso is a great player. Ayo DeSumo is also another great player that they have as a guard. They have Kobe White, but not three. I mean, Caruso can fill in for the defense for Lonzo, but the playmaking, the 3-point shooting, I don't think they're going to be able to replace that. And just like the ability to just like change the pace just so quick. It's going to suck for the Bulls. I really do feel bad for the Bulls because they pretty much went all in there. And I think they make the playoffs, but I think just depending on how their injury luck goes, they could actually very well be a playing team just with, bad luck. But, as long as Lonzo comes back, I think they're definitely a playoff team. Next, we got the Brooklyn Nets here. Oh, man, you guys aren't going to like me for this one. I've never been a believer in the Nets. I think they're a playoff team. They personally, in the past, 3 seasons that they've been together, we'll take out that first season because KD never played, but just the last 2 seasons, they made it out the first round, then they lost in 7 games to the Bucks, and then this last season they got swept by the Celtics. There's just so many question marks for me for this Nets team. Their defense, so obviously adding Ben Simmons helps you defensively, but I really question them when you see reports about them running Ben Simmons at the 5, and I just think that'd be good for a couple minutes, but if you're going to be running that as like a consistent lineup, I think you're cooked. In my opinion, you're just cooked. Obviously, you maximize a lot of your offensive potential, but your defense, although like maybe doesn't get bad, but it definitely doesn't get better. So Defense has always been a question mark for me for the Nets, and it still is now. I just don't feel comfortable putting them in that conference finals. It's like we have the Heat and the Sixers and the Bucks. We have those three teams above them. And I think there's some teams here, in the East, like the Hawks and the Cavs, that I think could potentially match up with the Nets. I think the Nets would win in those series, but it'd be very close. I don't know. I personally do not believe in the Nets. If you put them in the conference finals contender, I totally understand. But I'm going to put them here at the playoff spot. We'll go with the Thunder next. We got the Thunder. I would actually put them in a almost play-in team, but then Chet got injured, and I think it's time to tank again. They're pretty much going to be the exact same team. They did get the two Williams, J-Dub and J-Will. I do know that. So that will obviously, I guess, hypothetically improve the roster. But we'll see what those two guys can do. But I think at this point, the Thunder are just going to tank again. But I think once Chet comes back and they get another draft, I think they should try to maybe go towards the play-in spot, maybe. We've got four more teams left. I'm just going to pick this last team off here, the Magic. They're tanking. They really don't have... They got Paulo. Cole Anthony is a great piece. Wendell Carter, great center, great contract as well for them. But they're just not good. So we're going to put them at that tank spot. We got three teams left. We got the Warriors. Warriors, finals contenders. They just won the championship. Not much to say here. Steph Curry is one of the greatest players of all time. He's bored. Some people may say he's top 10 all time. I definitely want to argue with that. Would I put him there? Maybe not. I have no idea. Really haven't thought about it. Maybe that's a future topic. But yeah, they just made the finals, so they kind of have to be here at finals contenders. Next, we got the Celtics. I'd also put them here in this finals contenders as well. I really like what the Celtics do. They have really good defense. They added Malcolm Brogdon. They had Gallinari, but Gallinari just got injured and he's going to be out for the season. I believe it was an ACL tear, and it was the same ACL. It was either ACL or like something with the knee, but it was the same one he dealt with earlier in the 2010s. So he's cooked. He's done. Prayers out to Gallinari, of course, but yeah, man, I think adding Brogdon definitely helps them because now you don't maybe have to see Peyton Pritchard minutes a lot in the playoffs. And Peyton Pritchard is a good point guard, but Brogdon is just better. So that always helps you. They obviously made the finals, so I think you got to put them in here as well. And I know I said that I think the Bucks, would have beat the Celtics, but that's not the reality. So I just out of respect with what the Celtics did, I think they got to go into this finals contender. And the last team is the LA Lakers. LA Lakers are a playing team, bro. I don't know how else to say this. Obviously, LeBron, AD, great players. But if you're going to continue to have an awful roster outside of those two, and have your starting point guard not fit in with your star players, I just don't think you're better than the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, the Grizzlies, or the Mavs. I just don't. And if we count like how many teams we have so far in this playoffs, you got the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Suns, and you have the Mavs, the Grizzlies, the Timberwolves, and the Pelicans. That's literally 8 teams. So that's 8 teams that I personally think are better than the Lakers. They pretty much automatically have to go into this play-in spot. If they trade Westbrook and they're somehow able to get Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, I think they go up into that playoff spot. But that hasn't happened yet, so I can't do that. So I got to keep them here at that play-in spot. Whew, man, that was a lot of talking right there. I'll do a quick recap for my listeners. Who want just a reminder of what teams are, in what rank. Again, if you're on YouTube, you can see this. That's totally fine, but I'm just going to do a quick recap. We got finals contenders. We have the Bucks, the Warriors, and the Celtics. In the conference finals contenders, we have the Sixers, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Suns, and the Heat. In the playoff rank, we have the Hawks, the Cavs, the Raptors, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, Pelicans, Bulls, and Nets. In the play-in spot, we have the Wizards, the Blazers, the Knicks, and the Lakers. In the almost play-in, we have the Kings and the Hornets. And in our tank, the last and worst tier, we have the Pistons, the Pacers, the Spurs, the Jazz, the Rockets, the Thunder, and lastly, the Magic. Oh, man. So there we go. There's all 30 teams ranked, in my opinion. Of course, if you don't agree with anything that I had just said, let me know. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. You can hit me up in the comments below the YouTube channel, or you can hit me up on Twitter. We can have a conversation about that. But I think these are pretty accurate. You know, I talked about some teams may possibly going up or down. I think it's always good to kind of be open to that. I think there's some teams that are just like obvious, like the Jazz. Like the Jazz are tanking. Like they just traded their 2 All-Stars. So some teams are pretty obvious on where they need to be, but I think some teams could fluctuate depending on injury luck. Obviously, the Nuggets were one of those that could potentially just be a playoff team because their star players get injured again. Like you never know. But this is assuming everyone is healthy. We always hope that the best players are healthy. So yeah, that's gonna finish off the podcast there. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully we got some more news to talk about for next week. Again, just as reminders, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at BHCT23. I also have my 2 YouTube channels. The first one is for this podcast, Beyond Half Court Podcast, and my other YouTube channel, Beyond Half Court. That other channel includes short form content. I've been doing ranking videos, but look on the lookout for some other sort of variety things. I may go over other people's careers. Wink, wink. Definitely going to be doing that, so look out for that. If you're interested, go subscribe, hit the noti bell, all that stuff. Like the video, 5-star reviews for all my podcasts, please. You will get a cookie if you do that. I don't know what else to tell you guys. I love y'all. Stay safe. Peace out.